Hey everyone, Sean Levinson here back with another super spicy episode of Hot Ones. Today we've got a poem called When You Have Words, I'll Be Waiting to Hear Them. This is a poem from the author by the name of Nikola Scannell. And if you like what you see from Nikola here, you can find more at tumblr.com/reviving Nikola. I'm going to put that in the description. So if you like this, you can just head on over to the Tumblr page. There are no content warnings on this piece, but the author left this note saying, "This poem is dedicated to my 5-month-old son," which is lovely, very nice. So we're gonna just jump right into the poem, but before we do, I'm gonna do the spiel. So keep in mind, I am not a professional reviewer, I'm just some guy on the internet who likes reading and writing. The opinions expressed in this video are only opinions. My interpretation of or reaction to the work will not be the same as everyone else's, for better or for worse. I will look for the good and the bad, but no matter what I say, don't be too hard on yourself, just keep writing. And for those in the comments, please be respectful. Also, I'm so sorry for any mistakes or mispronunciations of names or words. If I come across a word that I don't want to say for whatever reason, I will replace it with the word blank. So, with that in mind, let's just go ahead and read through it once, and then we will take it line by line as we tend to do. Sorry, just... Okay. When you have words, I'll be waiting to hear them. I'm watching the corners of your mouth, curling out of a dream, sleepy, little wanderers who made the uncertain rove the uncertain rove to my side of the world. Where was your origin, tiny smile? Was it in an auburn fog of Mama's close face? Her writhing in accents floated above, bumbling petitions for your laughter. My love, was it the still of Daddy's lone kiss that comes over brim, the stony dam of his stoic lips, to bless you a good day at the door? Was it something kept solely tucked into the folds of your burgeoning brain that you conjured from abstract shapes you absorb while I polish the dishes or read you a book? Was it something I know nothing of? I remember the first dream I dreamed of you, your bursting eyes, a fresh fire of bliss. Intently, I focused so intently, I swear, until the current of subconscious pictures swung on and the film I stared through was replaced by something unremarkable. Then awake. I remember how relieving it was to be living that morning, the kind of relief that steals time from the past, giving the present more room to stretch out and makes right anything that was ever unright. In this timelessness breathed the infant prayer that was morning, and I felt I remembered the clarity of early life. So maybe what you dreamed was something long since forgotten. What bittersweet heartbreak it is, taking this peculiar arrangement of time to remind us how purely we were cherished. Just being gave way to the wholeness of love that someone once cared that we dreamed. Okay, this is pretty neat. Granted, I think I say that with some bias because this actually feels kind of similar to a lot of the poetry I've been writing these days, which is sort of these longer lines, longer stanzas, free verse, that whole thing. Um, but there is a lot to like here, even besides the things that remind me of myself. And yeah, I guess I'm a bit of a narcissist. Let's get that out of the way real quick. But uh, yeah, there's a lot going on here that I am pretty excited to talk about. So I think we'll just get into it, and I'll just list my thoughts as they come. So, first stanza. I'm watching the corners of your mouth curling out of a dream, sleepy, little wanderers who made the uncertain move to my side of the world. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to bring up is that this poem is pretty minimal on the punctuation. There are a lot of question marks and like the occasional comma, but for the most part, it's often unclear where phrases are supposed to end. So let's see. I'm watching the corners of your mouth curling out of a dream, sleepy. Little wanderers who made the uncertain rove to my side of the world. So that stanza's not too hard to follow. I think the line breaks do a pretty good job of guiding us on where these phrases begin and end, but let's keep an eye on that as we move forward. Um, as for the first two lines alone, I'm watching the corners of your mouth curling out of a dream. Uh, you know, that's just a poetic way of saying you're sleeping and dreaming and smiling, right? And I kind of like it. As a first line, I don't know if it should be the hook of the poem. I don't know. I think later there are more engaging parts that maybe you could start with. I don't know. That's pretty subjective, I suppose, but yeah. Let's keep going and we'll see. Maybe there is a part down the line that would be a better opener for this poem here. But I do like the way that this is phrased, honestly. I'm watching the corners of your mouth curling out of a dream. Yeah, that reads pretty well. As for Sleepy, I recently did a workshop with Rick Jackson is his name. He's a translator, a poetry translator, and I think he does prose too. Though that's besides the point. In this workshop, Rick said that he is pretty lukewarm, or even less than that, really. He doesn't love when one words make up single lines or even single stanzas in a poem, because in his mind, if you're going to do that, the word has to carry a lot of weight, right? It has to really merit its own line. And I think I would agree with that personally. And so in this specific case, I don't really know that Sleepy does merit its own line. And now it might be formatted this way to kind of help us with the phrasing, right? Because in theory, if these three lines were all one sentence, I'm watching the corners of your mouth curling out of a dream, sleepy, then there would probably be a comma after the word dream, right? So maybe the line break here is supposed to just denote that there's a pause before the word sleepy, and then another line break to denote that there's supposed to be a period after that, right? It's also curious that sleepy is capitalized. Um, Maybe sleepy is actually the start of a new sentence. Um, Sleepy little wanderers who make the uncertain rove to my side of the world. Um, yeah, I'm getting the sense that that is the case, and so already we can see that the lack of punctuation is causing a bit of a gap in understanding potentially, because I don't know whether to take sleepy as part of the previous line or as part of the line that follows it. So yeah, Nicola, I hope you can see where my confusion stems from there, and I'll be curious to hear if anybody else felt that same confusion at all. But I'm starting to think that it's actually part of the last two lines of the stanza, sleepy little wanderers who made the uncertain rove to my side of the world. And I'm not entirely sure what that's referring to. Is that referring to the corners of the mouth? That's kind of all I can think, right? Sleepy little wanderers who made the uncertain rove to my side of the world. Yeah, I think that is the case. In which case, that's not bad. Like, it was hard for me to grasp at first, but now that I feel like I've got it, I hope I've got it. Um, Not bad. Yeah, I like that idea of, like, the positivity of the dream sneaking into the waking world. Yeah, very interesting. So, yeah, that's our first stanza. I think that's all I have to say on it. I'll just reiterate though that I like the language and I like the sound. Like, again, I'm watching the corners of your mouth curling out of a dream, sleepy little wanderers who made the uncertain rove to my side of the world. I like that. That just sounds poetic, frankly. I don't know if there's a better way to say it than that. I love the choice of the word rove. That's really great. And then again, just the description of like a sleeping smile. Yeah, I like it. So let's move to our second stanza. Where was your origin, tiny smile? Was it in an auburn fog of Mama's close face? Her writhing in accents floated above, bumbling petitions for your laughter. Okay, that seems pretty clear to me, as long as we assume that the mother has probably red hair, maybe a freckled face or like a naturally red face, right? Um, Was it in an auburn fog of Mama's close face? Her writhing in accents floated above, pause, bumbling petitions for your laughter. So, yeah, besides the fact that I got a little bit tripped up with the break at that line there, I think this is pretty clear. The mother is literally like hovering above the baby and doing voices to the baby, right, writing in accents and trying to get the baby to laugh by way of her voices, right, her accents that are writhing, right. So yeah, I don't really have much more to say than that. Again, I like it. It feels poetic to me. So let's move to our next lines. My love, was it the still of daddy's lone kiss that comes over brim the stony dam of his stoic lips to bless you a good day at the door? That one is perhaps a little harder to follow, but I think I still get it because we're still asking, like, where did this smile come from? And the hypothesized answer in this portion is maybe it was my lips, right? Maybe it was the dad's lips, the dad's kiss. And I like the phrasing that comes over brim, the stony dam of his stoic lips. Actually, I don't know, something feels wrong about the one of the verb tenses there. Was it the still of daddy's lone kiss that comes over brim, the stony dam of his stoic lips? I think maybe you just wanna delete the word comes and then just do over brims, right? Was it the still of daddy's lone kiss that over brims the stony dam of his stoic lips? Yeah, to me, personally, that sounds better, but again, maybe that's too subjective of a note. But yeah, if it were me, I would get rid of the word comes. I think it's kind of hindering the rhythm of this line and the clarity of it too. Yeah. Um, but yes, again, the question is, where does this smile come from? And the potential answer is it came from daddy's lips. It came from dad's kiss, right? The same kiss that comes from the lips that smile because of you, right? Presumably, you, the baby, to bless you a good day at the door, and the same lips that wish you a good day, right? Or say, have a good day, right? That's the vibe I get, and I don't know, maybe I'm pulling too much here, but, like, it reminds me of when I was a child and I would, leave for school and my parents would say, like, "Have a good day," right? That's kind of the vibe I'm getting, that the dad here, and we assume that the dad is the speaker because it says actually, maybe that's a poor assumption. The speaker could be the mother. Yeah. I guess, yeah, I just got a little confused because this portion started out "my love," and then we moved into "daddy," but no, the "my" could still be referring to the mother. Sorry. Poor assumption on my part. That was an unfair extrapolation. But and I'm about to make another one. Like I said, I could be pulling too much here, more than there actually is, but it almost sounds to me like whoever is speaking here is imagining one day that the child will be grown up and they will bless the child with the words, "Have a good day," as they leave through the door. So, again, I might be pulling too much there, but I don't know. I feel like the language is, on the whole, very effective if it can elicit that image from me, right? So sorry. I think I went on too many tangents there. So let's just keep going. Was it something kept solely tucked into the folds of your burgeoning brain that you conjured from abstract shapes you absorb while I polish the dishes or read you a book? So, I like that for a lot of reasons. I really like burgeoning brain as a phrase. Those two words side by side, I think, work really well. And I like this just conceptually. Like, I wonder all the time, what do babies dream about, right? Because, like, I don't know. It might depend on your cosmology, on your religion. Cosmology, I guess, is the wrong word there. But yeah, like, if babies come from somewhere grand, then do they have dreams of like the before life, right? Or do they understand more than we realize and they have dreams that are comprehensible to us, but we just don't and can't know it, right? So yeah, like I said, I like this conceptually, and maybe that's more how the poem should begin, right? With the question of like, what are you dreaming about? And you can phrase it more poetically than that, or maybe that should even be the title, right? I don't dislike this title. When you have words, I'll be waiting to hear them. But it does, just based on what we've read so far, it does almost feel like the title to a different poem. I think the title here should be more along the lines of, what do you dream about, right? Or at 5 months old, what do you dream about, right? Because that as a title to me sounds like more intriguing than simply when you have words, I'll be waiting to hear them. Again, people may disagree with me on that, but that's just my thinking up to this point. Moving back to these lines, was it something, whoa, whoa, whoa. Was it something kept solely tucked into the folds of your burgeoning brain that you conjured from abstract shapes you absorb while I polish the dishes or read you a book? Polish is a nice verb there. I like that personally. Um, Frankly, I don't have too much more to say about those lines. Again, I think They sound pretty nice, pretty poetic. And I think the question is a worthy question, right? Like, are you dreaming about something I can't even understand, right? Yeah. Like I said, I don't have much more to say than that. And then I thought this line was a pretty effective last line for the stanza. Was it something I know nothing of? And then, yeah, the stanza break feels kind of perfect there because it's like, it's as if the speaker is leaving room to think about it, right? Was it something I know nothing of? Pause, stare off into the distance. Crazy to think that there are things we know nothing about, right? So, yeah, I don't think I need to explain it more than that. It's just a very nice use of the poetic form, putting the stanza break right there. I remember the first dream I dreamed of you, your bursting eyes, a fresh fire of bliss. Intently I focused, so intently, I swear, until the current of subconscious pictures swung on, and the film I stared through was replaced by something unremarkable. Then awake, I remember how relieving it was to be living that morning, the kind of relief that steals time from the past, giving the present more room to stretch out, and makes right anything that was ever unright. So I'm going to pause there because I think that's supposed to be the end of that phrase. But man, that's a really long phrase, and the line breaks are helping for sure. And now that this is my second reading of the poem, I do feel like I have a better grasp on it and where the pauses should be. But, not every reader is going to read a poem twice over. Um, yeah. So I guess my suggestion is potentially you might want to break this phrase up. It doesn't necessarily have to be with punctuation. I wouldn't say it has to be with a line break either, but maybe there is just maybe a little too much here. You could cut some of these words or some of these phrases. Let's go through it again. I remember the first dream I dreamed of you. So that's nice. And in fact, we could separate that from the following phrase. But that line is like on theme. It makes sense. I think it's a fair follow up. Your bursting eyes, a fresh fire of bliss. Intently I focused, so intently, I swear. Okay, so I like your bursting eyes, a fresh fire of bliss. Pretty good. Yeah, I think any parent could probably relate to that, right? Looking in their child's eyes, especially a newborn child. As for intently I focused, so intently I swear. I don't know, is the emphasis doing the heavy lifting there? Personally, for me, I don't know if it is. You can call this nitpicking for sure because the poem overall, I think, is still good. Um, but yeah, I don't know if I would keep all of this emphasis here because, like, I don't know why does the speaker feel the need to emphasize that so much? Like, who are they trying to convince, right? Because I believe them when they say intently I focused. I believe them. I have no reason to doubt them, right? And so the extra emphasis in that particular spot, I just don't know about it. But again, feel free to disagree with me. Author, Nikola, you can disagree with me. Viewer, you can disagree with me. Totally fine. Until the current of subconscious pictures swung on, and the film I stared through was replaced by something unremarkable. Then awake, I remember how relieving it was to be living that morning, the kind of relief that steals time from the past, giving the present more room to stretch out, and makes right anything that was ever unright. So I think we can do some pausing between phrases here, more pausing. I honestly do think maybe a period somewhere would be helpful. Um, because there's a lot going on here, right? So until the current of subconscious pictures swung on and the film I stared through was replaced by something unremarkable. Ergo, I woke up. I woke up from the dream, right? And the speaker literally confirms that. There is a period, a comma there, which is I think helpful, but I don't know. I feel like I long for more. And maybe again, maybe this is like so nitpicking. Maybe I'm having trouble like even deciding what to talk about here because like I said, I think on the whole the poem is good. I like it personally. So I'm having trouble giving critique. But let's just keep going. Then awake, I remembered how relieving it was to be living that morning, the kind of relief that steals time from the past, giving the present more room to stretch out, and makes right anything that was ever unright. Let's just focus on that bit. Then awake, I remember how relieving it was to be living that morning, the kind of relief that steals time from the past, giving the present more room to stretch out, and makes right anything that was ever unright. I don't know. The more I read it, the more I think maybe it's fine. Um, the phrase steals time from the past. Hmm, maybe there could be a different way to phrase that, but I don't think it's bad by any means necessarily. I don't know. It just feels like we're moving at a breakneck pace because of the lack of punctuation here. And I don't know if breakneck is what you wanted for this section, right? That's always the assumption I make when I see a poem that's kind of short on punctuation is I assume that we're supposed to be kind of tumbling through it. But the vibe here feels a lot more uh aware and like reflecting. Um it feels like the kind of thing you would want to take more slowly. Yeah, I don't know. I hope that makes sense. Like I said, I'm gonna reemphasize, you can call all of that nitpicking. Now that I'm getting the hang of the style here, I feel a lot more fine with it. I feel a lot better with it. I wanted to mention this reminds me of a recent collection that I read called The Boss by Victoria Chang, because Chang's poetry in that collection also doesn't use punctuation, and it's hard, very hard to know where phrases are supposed to end. But after like the first 3 or 4 poems, I kind of got the sense of what the poems were all about. And kind of the same thing happened here, where now that I'm reading the poem a second time, it does feel a lot easier to grasp. Um, and I mentioned, not every reader is going to be willing to give one poem 2 reads, right? And so I guess some context is going to matter. Like, is this poem part of a collection with other poems that are similar, right? Like, how is the reader going to get the taste for your style to know what you're going for? And I I can be kind of a hasty reader in general, where I don't always take line breaks to be pauses, even though well, it depends, because some authors, kind of like Nikola here, I would assume, do use line breaks to indicate pauses, right? Whereas other authors use line breaks for entirely different reasons, and you're not meant to pause where the line breaks are. So, so call that like a bad habit on my part, or call it imposing my way of reading onto this poem. Whereas, I should have I should have slowed down a little bit, should have taken the line breaks to be pauses. So yeah, I don't know. These are just things to keep in mind that not every reader is going to know that these line breaks are supposed to be places for them to pause, right? That seems obvious, right? It seems like any reader should, but I've just read so much poetry that I know that line breaks aren't always meant to indicate that, right? So I don't know. Gosh, I don't know that any of this is helpful. I apologize. Let's keep going. In this timelessness breathed the infant prayer that was morning, and I felt I remembered the clarity of early life. So maybe what you dreamed was something long since forgotten. Okay, maybe this is where I got the most confused on the first reading. In this timelessness breathed the infant prayer that was morning. Yeah, that line in particular, I'm not sure I get. Um, Yeah, I just don't really have a handle on what breathed the infant prayer that was morning. I'm not entirely sure what that means. Like, as in, the literal morning is an infant prayer. So, like, that's a metaphor that you're making. That morning is the infant prayer. Or, like, did the baby breathe like a prayer? And you're comparing that to morning, right? I could be just dumb. I am very dumb a lot of the time. Um, but yeah, like I said, I just don't really have a handle on what this line in particular means. And I felt I remembered the clarity of early life. That one I like pretty well. Yeah, that just makes sense to me, right? And I feel the same way with like my nieces and nephews when they're babies and toddlers. Um, They remind me of what it was like to be young, right? And then last line of the stanza. So maybe what you dreamed was something long since forgotten. Mhm. I don't know if I know how the speaker arrived at that conclusion. I guess maybe that's part of the issue too. Um, is the speaker then suggesting that the baby, like, had a memory, like, before being alive? Yeah, I think that's the only way I can interpret it, which is fine, but it just, I don't know, it caught me off guard. Kinda seems to come out of nowhere. Like I said, like, I'm not entirely sure how the speaker arrived at that conclusion. Yeah, I hope Nicola, you can understand where I'm coming from when I say that. Yeah, just the the stanza, I thought, especially on my first reading, the stanza was a little hard to follow. Um, so that also could be contributing to my misunderstanding of the last line here, but yeah, take all of this with a grain of salt. Yeah, keep all of that in mind. Mm. What bittersweet heartbreak it is, taking this peculiar arrangement of time to remind us how purely we were cherished. Just being gave way to the wholeness of love that someone once cared that we dreamed. Okay, that feels like a pretty nice ending. Um, I feel like the discussion of time might actually belong in a different poem, taking this peculiar arrangement of time. I feel like it's kind of getting away from what the poem is actually about, which is dreams and the focus of the focus on babies as they dream, right? Um, and ultimately, I like the conclusion that that leads to, right? Just being gave way to the wholeness of love that someone once cared that we dreamed. I like that. It's like I've held sleeping babies before, and yeah, like I said, I wonder what they dream about, and like they're beautiful, right? I love newborns, I love babies. Um, it's just it's a marvel to hold them, right? There is something beautiful about it. Um, and I think, Nicola, you're getting at something superhuman here and super, poignant, super powerful that that we can see human love in the life of a baby, right? And in the way the parents care for that baby. So, yeah, I like the conclusion here, but like I said, I feel like the discussion of time, taking this peculiar arrangement of time and then back in this stanza, the kind of relief that steals time from the past, giving the present more room to stretch out and make right anything that was ever unright. I don't even dislike those lines. I really do like those lines. I like the way you write. But like I said, I feel like they're almost distracting from the true meat of this poem. And you can disagree for sure. Like I said, with pretty much everything I've said so far. Nicola, you can disagree. Viewer, you can disagree. Because I've said this and I'll say it again. Overall, I do still think the poem is very good. And even though the bits about time might not feel super on point, I do still see why you, the author, chose to put them there. I do. Um, and they don't ultimately take away from what I think is great about this poem. But I do wonder, right, if you took these lines and maybe migrated them to a different poem, what would the remaining poem here look like? Would it be focused? Would it be more focused? Would it be even more poignant, more powerful? Potentially, but ultimately, that's up for you to decide. Um, I wanna read the whole thing through again, like all of it, not removing anything, now that I have a better understanding of where to pause and kind of what the meaning is overall. I do wanna say again, I do think this title belongs to a different poem. I like it as a title, but yeah, I think this poem needs a different title personally. That's just my thinking. Ultimately, of course, the poem is yours, Nicola, right? And you are the only one who can say what's right and what's wrong about it and how it ought to look in the end. Um, but yeah, With all that in mind, let's just read through it again. I want to read through it again. When you have words, I'll be waiting to hear them. I'm watching the corners of your mouth, curling out of a dream. Sleepy little wanderers who made the uncertain rove to my side of the world. Where was your origin, tiny smile? Was it in an auburn fog of Mama's close face? Her writhing in accents floated above, bumbling petitions for your laughter. My love, was it the still of Daddy's lone kiss that comes over brim, the stony dam of his stoic lips? To bless you a good day at the door. Was it something kept solely tucked into the folds of your burgeoning brain that you conjured from abstract shapes you absorb while I polish the dishes or read you a book? Was it something I know nothing of? I remember the first dream I dreamed of you, your bursting eyes, a fresh fire of bliss. Intently I focused, so intently, I swear, until the current of subconscious pictures swung on and the film I stared through was replaced by something unremarkable. Then awake, I remember how relieving it was to be living that morning, the kind of relief that steals time from the past, giving the present more room to stretch out and makes right anything that was ever unright. In this timeless in this timelessness breathed the infant prayer that was morning, and I felt I remembered the clarity of early life. So maybe what you dreamed was something long since forgotten. What bittersweet heartbreak it is, taking this peculiar arrangement of time to remind us how purely we were cherished. Just being gave way to the wholeness of love that someone once cared that we dreamed. Okay, so I do think it reads better that way. One thought I had was, I don't know that you need my love here personally, because I don't know. I already get the sense that the speaker loves the baby, and so it just feels kind of unnecessary. And it also, again, kind of like I mentioned with sleepy up here, I don't know that those words merit their own line. Like, because like I said, I already get the sense that the speaker loves the baby. I don't need it emphasized that strongly. And it kind of distracts from what's really interesting about this stanza, which is the speculation as to what the baby dreams about, right? So, with that in mind, I kind of want to give you an exercise here, Nicola. Take this poem, and I'm going to task you with cutting 30% of it. I want you to take the poem and just leave 70% of what's already here. And you have to cut 30%. You can do that by word count, by number of lines, however you want to interpret that. You can speak it out loud and time yourself, and then imagine you have to do it in 70% of the time. And so if you're going to do that, what lines, what words are you going to cut to make that happen? I just want you to try that as an exercise, and then see if you don't like the short version better. And if you don't, that's totally fine. If this is the final version of the poem, that's great, because it is a good poem, I think. I like it personally. But yeah, just give that a try. I really think that I think I think that helps. It helps you to understand what's necessary in your poem. It helps you to understand if there are any unnecessary parts, if there are any parts that never needed to be there all along in the first place, right? As an example, I told you I was just in a workshop with Rick Jackson. Um, During that workshop, we were tasked with writing a list. It could be like a short story, a flash fiction story, or a poem, right? But just a creative list. And originally, I came up with a list of 100 things. And then there was a reading that we had to do, and we only had 5 minutes total for our readings. So if we wanted to read the list, right, we either had to read just a portion of it, or we would have to cut it down to fit the 5 minutes, right? Assuming it wasn't already within the 5 minutes. It could have been a very short list if we had wanted it to. So I had come up with a list of 100 things, but when I read that out loud, when I practiced it, it was over 7 minutes. And so I decided, I'll keep this version, but I'll make a copy and then I'll do an abridged version so that it'll fit the 5 minutes. And so I cut it down to 60 things, which in the end just barely fit in the 5 minutes. And I ended up liking the 60-point list better than the 100-point list. So, that's not always going to be the case when you're revising, but I do think it's a useful exercise. So, anyway, I've yapped too much. I want to reemphasize again that I like this poem. I really do. It sounds like a poem, which is great, right? You know, sometimes a poetry sounds like prose, and sometimes that works great. Other times it's just like, this should have just been prose. But this really sounds like a poem, which is awesome. I can tell you have a care for the language here, which fantastic, really fantastic. And like I said, I like the message a lot. I really like this conclusion at the very, very end. I think it's really strong. Yeah. So if you want, attempt that exercise, see how it works out for you. But I think we'll just leave it right there. Nicola, I want to thank you again for submitting this. I hope your son is doing great, and I hope all things are great. Um, yeah, keep writing. This is good. Once again, this is Nikola Scannell. Their Tumblr will be linked at the top of the description if you want to see more. And ultimately, keep in mind, this is a rough draft.